Ottawa is at odds with provinces led by Conservative premiers again. Immigration Minister Mark Miller there today rejecting opposition to a federal plan to resettle asylum seekers across the country. Here's a little background on the issue. The Feds say Ontario and Quebec welcome a disproportionate percentage of those asylum seekers, and that needs to change. Discussions have been initiated with provinces to resettle more people across the country, but some provinces don't appear interested in those talks. Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Alberta, and Saskatchewan are now pushing back against any semblance of a plan. Let's bring back the front bench to talk about this. Sabrina Grover, Jamie Ellerton, Carl Belanger, and Judah Almalise are here. Sabrina, I'll start with you because you're coming to us from Alberta. We just spoke to Immigration Minister Mark Miller. I asked him point blank, are you going to force a certain amount of asylum seekers on provinces without compensation? He said no, without consent. And he said no, not without consent. What is the genesis of the pushback in your view?
You know, I think, I do live in Alberta, and I think Danielle Smith lives Alanis Morissette's version of irony, which is that it's a break with reality when it comes to topics around immigration and growth pressures. We saw that video that she had yesterday, that announcement around education funding, and all of the context she'd had leading up to that video this week is that she was surprised that there was population growth in this province. After the province ran millions of dollars ad campaign trying to recruit workers from Ontario, from around the world to Alberta. Alberta's calling. I say that all the time. And at the same time, we have, an immigration stream related to tourism coming to this province. We have other incentives being offered. The Premier cannot be surprised that we have soaring population growth and that she has not, and her predecessor, Jason Kenney, have done nothing to invest in housing, in transit, in education leading up to that. And so, I think it's easy for the Premier to weaponize immigrants, and it's easy for her to make the Feds and Justin Trudeau the enemy. But at the end of the day, the enemy is within. The provinces are not prepared for this because they haven't put in the efforts.
I think the Alberta case is a bit different because, Carl, they are dealing with, as Sabrina spelled out, inflows of immigration that other provinces that are voicing these concerns, like New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, aren't at the same level. They're coming out and making these accusations about being, forced asylum seekers without compensation that the minister says is not true. What's going on here in your view?
Well, I think the federal government is reacting to Quebec being very loud about this for quite some time. And they certainly have welcomed a lot of migrants without consent, and they've been fighting with the federal ever since to get some kind of compensation, and Ontario is now on board with that. What's interesting, though, is that a lot of these premiers, especially Danielle Smith, has been seeking temporary foreign workers, for instance, have been trying to get people in the province, but not those people. We don't want them, right? And it feels at time that, migrants are coming here to take our jobs. That's transformed and morphed into migrants are coming here to take our school spaces, our hospitals room, and etc. So, I think it's a debate that's very dangerous. But at the same time, I think clearly the federal government was going too far, too fast, and now they're paying the political price. And it's a debate that is not going to be an easy one.
Yeah, Najud, I think a lot of what Carl says is very accurate. And it's hard because it's one of those issues that right away can go down a really bad path. But at the same time, there are very real consequences. You've written at length in the Canadian press about the population growth, which is almost entirely due to immigration and its impact on things especially like housing.
I think provinces know that the federal government is the one on the hot seat for immigration, and so it's easy to be able to point the finger at them. But I think Mark Miller rightly pointed out that Alberta, among other provinces, have advocated for more population growth, more immigrants. If you look back at comments from 2022, provinces are putting out statements applauding the federal government for increasing their immigration targets. And so you can see that this is really tied up with the fact that who we're talking about is asylum seekers. And it's not really coherent to say, yes, we want more immigrants, please come, we want to grow Alberta, but then say that, oh no, we actually don't have school spaces for the thousands of asylum seekers that we're being asked to take on.
Yeah, I don't think that the provinces are making an entirely, Jamie, intellectually consistent argument. I also think two things can be true. The Feds were late to respond to concerns from Quebec and then Ontario about the impact that the asylum seeker population was having on their ability to absorb it. I think it's true that it took them a long time to figure out how to address it. That's not excusing the pushback necessarily from the provinces, but I think there is, like Najud said, a vulnerability there.
Yeah, but I think at the core of this, Vassy, is the fact that Justin Trudeau and his government have actually lost control of the immigration system. They have smashed the Canadian consensus that the immigration system was a good thing, well managed, and that in addition to bringing in streams of economic migrants that were more productive and immediately contributing to the economy and as tax-paying members of society, we also welcome people from around the world fleeing persecution and war zones. That system has fundamentally broken. And you heard this time and time again whenever Premier Legault would get too uppity about how many people were coming through Roxham Road. He would scream and Ottawa would say, we got to do something about this. And they shipped them down the 401 into Ontario. And they filled low-budget hotels in Kingston, Ontario, Niagara Falls in the Niagara region, Windsor, Toronto, etc., because they were all full. And so they had to go keep further and further afield. I even know that some of the Ethiopian diaspora who were coming, they were landing at Pearson, but getting on a bus to Montreal to claim refugee status because asylum seekers in Quebec got different benefits than if you'd landed at the Pearson airport. And so there's a lot of politics going on here, but fundamentally what's at stake here is the Liberals have broken the system and they're now struggling to rein it in. They're struggling to clean up their mess. And yes, I agree with you in some sense, Vassy, that the provinces are going to be a bit politically convenient in terms of how they advance the politics of this. Of course, a premier picking a fight with the federal government, especially one this unpopular, is always going to be more popular close to home. But fundamentally, we need new leadership in Ottawa that is going to fix the immigration system and restore what was working well for Canada and not turn this into a fractious political debate that can lead to very dark places.
Do you think, Sabrina, there's the efforts underway, finally, I guess it's fair to say, could have still accomplished that? Like, could still kind of work to address the stuff that Jamie's laying out?
I think so. And I think that the Liberals and, Minister Miller have taken really concrete steps towards fixing some of those gaps and fixing especially some of the gaps with temporary foreign workers, making sure that industries and employers who are bringing these workers in are treating them up to the highest standards and actually meeting the higher standards in order to bring them in. But at the end of the day, as it's been pointed out, provinces have been asking for temporary foreign workers. They've been asking for economic skilled workers for years, and they still are. I saw a report the other day that said that in order to fill the gaps in farming, we need 30,000 new workers in the coming years. There's still gaps in skilled construction shortage. So I think there is a disparate between what's in the economy that's happening for workers and how provinces are actually treating those workers when they get there. And it is up to the provinces to invest in things like housing, in education and transit.
I got last 30 seconds to you, Carl.
Yeah, we'll have to see where this leads, but there's contradiction in the provincial position. At the same time, clearly, Quebec and Ontario cannot be the only ones welcoming them.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I got to leave it there. Thanks, everyone.